Two guys who think they know something about sports. You just found them. I'm Eric Stark. This is Mike Gross. We're in the Low Post. Thanks for joining us. We got a couple topics we're going to chat about this week, Mike. One of them is the Phillies. I was watching some show on ESPN, probably at Baseball Tonight, and somebody threw out the scenario, just a thought they had. What if you traded Ryan Howard? He's struggling this year. Phillies are doing pretty well. He's not been a big reason why they're having the success they're having. He's got a lot of strikeouts, average is down. Would you trade him or not?
When you say would you trade anybody, it's always, well, it depends who you could get for him, obviously. So let's take that as a given. Couple of things about Ryan Howard. He is the kind of hitter that is going to have big ups and big downs. He's the kind of kind of body type that tends not to age well. First base is a position where it's relatively easy to find a first baseman who can hit. So I'm not saying Ryan Howard is replaceable, but the Ryan Howard that they're getting now is utterly replaceable. And I think you also have to look at Ryan Howard's money. I think you also have to look at Ryan Howard's contractual situation. They have gotten a lot of production out of Ryan Howard to this point in his career for a relatively small amount of money. I mean, by major league standards. That is going to change immediately next year. Whether they sign him to a long-term deal or whether it's about arbitration, it's going to cost a lot of money to keep him. And another thing to think about here is Ryan Howard is not as young as he's sort of perceived to be. I've told you this before, Starkey, but I mean, Albert Pujols is younger than Ryan Howard.
He'll be 30 in November.
Yeah, and I don't think even if you go another year with arbitration and give him a 1-year deal, now you're up to age 31. Are we going to give him a 5-year deal for $70 million or something like that? I think where they are with Ryan Howard contractually, the kind of player he is, and the state of their farm system, I think it makes an awful lot of sense to at least look at moving him.
Talk about the state of that farm system. We're going to stay on Ryan Howard, but how's Allentown doing this year?
It is not good. It is not good. The Phillies AAA affiliate, the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, have played like Iron Pigs. They are, the last time I looked, they were 5-30, and 4 of the 5 wins were by a 31-year-old pitcher. You would when you hear a record like that, you would think that it's a bunch of young prospects who are maybe making a big step up to AAA. Not the case at all. It's a lot of guys in their 30s, not a lot of grade A prospects at all, and it's still a novelty there. They're filling the ballpark. They're averaging 7,000 fans a game, but it's a god-awful team. If you look at these Baseball America rankings of prospects, the Phillies do not do well there and really haven't for years. They actually have kind of hit the jackpot on guys like Chase Utley has turned out to be better than anybody would have thought, right, based on what kind of prospect he was. So replenishing the farm system is certainly an issue, and certainly what you would be looking to do if you traded Ryan Howard.
A couple points. One, if you trade Ryan Howard, you're building the team around Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins anyhow. And I think because of the age of Howard, he's 30 years old right now, because this team seems to play on a payroll anyhow, even though they are one of the bigger teams in the market. You really want to be paying him the big bucks, $10 million this year, and last year he set a major league record, 199 strikeouts, Mike. He's on a pace to break his own record. He got 54 already as of Saturday.
He's on a pace to bury that record.
Yeah. You could get a couple good prospects. You look at what the Mets got when they traded for Johan Santana and traded him to the Twins. Gomez is doing really well in that Twins deal. You get a couple young pitchers. You get a young third baseman maybe, or a young outfielder to go with a couple young arms. That's how you keep yourself strong for years to come, folks, especially if you see Utley and Rollins are your future.
And there's no question that Ryan Howard would still have the value that you could parlay into building your farm system. 2 years ago, he was the MVP of the National League. Last year, 47 homers, 137 RBIs, something like that. Still has, and you know, it would be silly to write off Ryan Howard based on a bad month and a half, too. I mean, that would also be a mistake. But we're talking about, I think it's the sort of talk radio quick fix reaction to this is be patient, relax, don't trade. You know, he's Ryan Howard, just wait. Well, I think you got to look. I think there's a possibility to look bigger picture than that, and look down the road and not hurt your team in the short run. I would look into trading Ryan Howard, and as always, the big asterisk that you put on this is it depends on what they can get for him.
I'll play devil's advocate.
Please do.
Pat Gillick, last year of his contract as the general manager, he's going to go off to the sunset, back to Seattle, or whatever he's going to do. Do you really want to be remembered as the GM that took away George Bell from the Phillies and now Ryan Howard? Remember, he was the guy who, in a Rule 5 draft, took George Bell to Toronto from the Phillies. I don't know. It would take a lot of guts, a lot of moxie, or I can use another word, but I won't because we're broadcasting, to make a deal like that, to take Ryan Howard, a guy who was Rookie of the Year just 3 years ago, MVP just 2 years ago. So I don't know if it's going to happen. Like you said, it's just one of these scenarios we're throwing out there. If you look at his numbers last year, about the same time, May 7th of last year, he was batting in 2007, 198, 4 home runs, 19 RBIs. May 9th of this year, 167. The average was down. Home runs are up to 6 home runs, and then 17 RBIs of this year. So the numbers are very similar, strikingly similar.
Last year he's coming off an injury, though.
Yeah, that's a difference. This year he's supposed to be healthy. And he's not listening to the coaches from what I've read as well. Manuel asked him to move a little closer to the plate. He tried it one game. Try it a week.
And Manuel's reaction is, well, he tried it and he didn't feel comfortable. Of course you're not going to feel comfortable. I mean,
right.
That's what these kind of changes are about. And you know, apparently Charlie can't say, I don't care if you don't feel comfortable, do it. You know, and that's he does seem like a guy who's Howard seems like a guy to me who kind of has the approach of, yeah, I mean, I'll be all right. Just relax. I'll take care. It's no big deal. Let's not overanalyze it. And there is a place for, I think, a more serious analytical approach to it than that.
Yeah, he's the fastest guy to reach 100 home runs, but I keep looking at him and thinking, move on. And I'm afraid if you invest the big money in him, that you won't get the dividends down the way.
Move on. George Scott, Adam Dunn. The name Dave Kingman just popped into my head. That's an insult to Ryan Howard. I'm sorry I even thought that big guy, but I mean, he's not Dave Kingman by any stretch, but he is a good hitter, and we're making him sound like we don't recognize that. He's a good hitter, and the Phillies have gotten an awful lot of mileage out of him in the last couple of years, and should have brought him to the major leagues quicker than he did. He should have been in the major leagues when he was 25 years old, and things might be completely different. The money, the contractual situation would be completely different. This whole thing would be, we'd be talking about a completely different thing. But that's not the case, and the Phillies are in a tough spot with Ryan Howard right now, and I don't think trading him ought to be out of the question.
Good points. Speaking of a tough spot, how about our local team, the Lancaster Barnstormers? Their best pitcher, Zach Parker, who seems to do well, and the team does well when he does well, is gone. And this team, the Barnstormers, 5-11 on the year.
5-11 is correct.
And this guy's what, 2-0.
He's 2-0 with a 1.3 ERA. In games that he's started, they're 3-1, which means in the games that he has not been involved, they're 2-10.
2-10.
Which is not going to get it done, my friends.
What do you do if you're the Barnstormers? I mean, they sort of knew this coming into the season, that they were getting guys that were not going to stay on this level, that had talent and should get signed to big league clubs. But here's your best pitcher, and he's now gone.
Well, nobody expected. I think everybody thought the Barnstormers were going to be an outstanding offensive team, and if their pitching was okay, they'd have an excellent season. Well, their pitching has not been very good except for this Zach Parker, and their offense has been pretty bad. Especially, this is an offense-driven league, I think, the Atlantic League. So I mean, nobody expected them to play this poorly to this point, and it doesn't seem like Parker's excellent starts have spurred better play down the road. I mean, on Saturday he pitched a great game, and on Sunday they got swept a doubleheader. So right now it's not happening. But independent leagues have no option but to listen when major league organizations call. So he's gone.
And this is what this league's all about. It's to get guys signed. He's going to Texas Rangers, and Texas could be a good fit for him. He's going Double-A for Texas, but Tell me a little bit about Texas. Why you think this might be a good situation for Zach?
Well, they have the second worst ERA in the American League.
Okay.
Their ERA is almost 5. Their team ERA. They just put Kevin Millwood on the DL.
Hamstring.
Not the surprise news item of the year, because Kevin often breaks down. They also put Jason Jennings on the DL. They've made a lot of roster moves in the last week or so involving their pitching staffs. They outright released one guy, sent some guys to the minors, brought a couple of guys up. They're going to give a start to Sidney Ponson.
Wow.
This week.
He's still in the big leagues.
Wow is right. So this is a team that's really struggling with pitching, and this is a guy. Parker has been for a while considered a prospect. He's left-handed, which has some value on the market, and this is sounds like a pretty good situation for him to maybe get an opportunity to pitch in the major leagues.
You know, I think, just was thinking of the Barnstormers, I got a good solution for them.
Wow.
You want to get the offense going? How about you sign the home run king, Barry Bonds? I heard he's still available out there.
He's out there. He's looking for a gig.
Donald Fear just realized he's out there and he's talking collusion. Well, why is the home run king available? 262 home runs. He wants to play still. What's going on with Barry Bonds, Mike? Do you think there's collusion? Why aren't teams putting him on a roster?
Well, I don't think there's collusion in the sense that Bud Selig sent out an email. You know, I mean, it's not that clear cut. But Barry Bonds can still hit, and you know, if you're going to say that a guy who's not as good as he used to be defensively, and can't really run much anymore, and isn't the most durable guy in here, isn't going to play 155 games a year for you, well, then how is Moises Alou still in the major leagues? I mean, Barry Bonds would not be the worst defensive left fielder in the major leagues, even if he had to play every day, and half the teams in the major leagues have a DH. So it's pretty hard for me to believe that some team wouldn't want to take a shot at Barry Bonds. The Toronto Blue Jays leap to mind.
Had Frank Thomas. Really.
Yeah, and teams that are not going well. I mean, you can make this argument that Barry brings a lot of negatives to the table, and if a team is going well, they're probably not going to be interested. But what about a team that's going lousy and struggling to score runs?
He can hit still. 276 last year, 28 home runs, 66 RBIs, and led the league in walks with 132 walks.
So you're talking a 450 or something on base percentage.
Yeah, it's really. But here's the thing: he made $19.3 million last year. After 15 seasons with the Giants, they said, we're not doing it anymore. Here's where the collusion comes in. All the teams got together at the ballpark at different times and talked and said, you know what? He's a jerk. We're tired of all the baggage. We're tired of the fact that he has to have a recliner at his stall. We're tired of the fact he has his own TV next to the recliner at the stall. Mike, you've been down to games last year where you were supposed to talk to him with other reporters. I remember hearing the stories when you came back.
That was quite
and then he decides not to show up. I mean, there is so much that goes with Barry Bonds besides the 276, the 28 home runs, and the 66 RBIs. I think teams have finally had enough. Now, when we get to June or July and teams need a little bit more boost for the pennant race, do they take a chance? And or if a team like Tampa Bay is not doing really well selling tickets, which they're not, I was there this year to see the Orioles in Tampa, do they sign them to get 20,000 instead of 13,000 on a Friday night?
You do get around, Starkey. It's very impressive.
I try.
It's very impressive.
Do it while you're young.
A couple things about Barry Bonds. 1993, Barry Bonds went from the Pittsburgh Pirates to the San Francisco Giants. The San Francisco Giants, who had lost 90-some games the year before, won 102 that year.
Wow.
And pretty much throughout his tenure with the Giants, Barry Bonds carried bad teams on his back into the midst of the pennant race, in 1 year all the way to the World Series. No, they never won the whole deal, and no, Bonds was never Hank Aaron in terms of postseason numbers. But imagine the San Francisco Giants without Barry Bonds for the last 10 years. So, he was always a jerk. When did the negative baggage start meaning losses? I mean, if you could say that he's dragging his teams down in terms of wins and losses, then yeah, you got a problem with the luxury seat at his stall. All the awful stuff that he apparently brings to the table. And believe me, he does bring awful stuff to the table. He's a bad human being. He's an awful person. But He's a great, great baseball player, and I don't see where his awfulness as a person has translated into losses on the field for the teams he's played for. That's what I don't get.
You make a good point. I flashing back, I'm traveling. I was in Scottsdale, Arizona once, and I was trying to get his autograph. I was not a reporter that day.
You were the Charles Kuralt of sports.
Wow, I like that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
And he was trying to avoid signing autographs and knocked over a little boy on his way out of the Scottsdale Memorial Stadium for spring training game.
He's an odious person.
So
based on monumental, anecdotal, but mountains of anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, we're piling on heavy, but you know what? If we're saying this, it must be twofold for teams not to take a chance with this guy. Why do you keep going to a Frank Thomas and some of these guys that aren't great hitters anymore when you see Barry Bonds numbers? Now he's 43 now, and his knee has been a problem, but I think that's from carrying the team so many years. His knee's finally giving out.
Right.
But it's interesting to watch this summer to see if anybody does take a chance with him. Sammy Sosa decides to retire because no team takes him.
Yeah, but that's different.
That's different. Yeah. But there are some other guys out there too.
But yeah, I think around the trade deadline in July that the Barry Bonds speculation will get overwhelming, and I think he probably will end up with somebody.
Another topic, Mike, that this week you and I were pondering. We're going, isn't it interesting in national basketball playoffs that if you're on the road, you can't win? What is up with this? Second round of the playoffs, 15-1 this year, folks. The only team to lose at home in the second round was the Orlando Magic.
Right.
The Boston Celtics, the best record right now. If you combine their playoffs with it in regular season, was it 72-20?
Yep.
Fantastic record. Best record. What was their record?
31-10.
31-10 on the road in the regular season.
Yep.
And they haven't won a road game in the playoffs. What's going on with these teams?
Well, 15-1. We went through this for last year's playoffs before we were doing our impeccable research. What were there? 27 road wins in last year's playoffs, I believe was the number we came up with. In the first round of the playoffs, there were 8, I believe. 8 road wins. And in the second round, there have only been 1. There's only been 1 road win in the whole second round of the playoffs. Maybe it's an aberration, but I think the outlier here is the Celtics. And it's a very unusual situation where you have a team that was awful and was a non-playoff team a year ago and remade their core nucleus players and became the best team in the league in the regular season, and now it's a team with huge track record regular season but no track record playoffs at all, which is very, very unusual. Think about it. That almost never happens. It almost can't happen in sports, and it feels to me like the Celtics have some mental and emotional barriers to overcome to just play the way they can in these playoff games.
There has to be growing pains.
Right.
Usually when you assemble a team like they have, they don't just go through the playoffs and win everything. You got to have the struggles first. I think recently the Detroit Pistons had to beat the Celtics before they became champions.
Right.
The Bulls had to beat the Pistons before they got to do it. You have that team that you had to lose a couple times to before you could get over to the next hurdle. The Celtics had a dominant regular season, but they haven't been together long enough in the playoffs to go through this. You mentioned to me, well, Kevin Garnett was the go-to man the other day in a game. Well, during the regular season, it was Ray Allen, and you can't go switching that right now. It's just sort of odd. I looked at a couple scenarios of why would a team do poorly in the playoffs. Well, one, not staying at home. But these NBA teams are staying in 4-season hotels. I wish I had that luxury.
Yeah, and not only that, but that's not unique to this year.
No, that's not staying in Motel 6 here. The flights, they're wearing down because of all the travel. Well, besides the opening round of a series, both teams are traveling, so they both have the same disadvantage.
And again, they're traveling in private planes. I mean, that can't be it. And that's not unique to this year.
Is it the crowd? Could it be the crowd? That's the best thing I come up with. How does the crowd play into this, Mike?
I just when I look at each of these individual series, I think it just feels to me like the home court is decisive in the Celtics series. I think it is in the certainly in the Spurs series with the New Orleans. I don't know. It just feels sometimes the home court advantage is huge, and sometimes it's not, and you can't quantify why it is and why it isn't. It falls into this sort of swamp of things that sometimes are a mental and emotional factor and sometimes aren't. And I realize that's not much of an answer, but I guess that's why we watch sports. That's why there's this inherent mystery in sports, Stark.
But I think you hit on something, the mental aspect of it. I think psychologically it's been drilled into these players that, it's harder to win.
Serve at home.
Yeah, it's harder to win on the road. It's tougher to win on the road. Win your home games, hold serve like you're saying. So it's almost like Pavlov's dog, I think, Mike. When the light comes on, the dog starts to slobber. When the Celtics go on the road, they lose. It's just.
Yeah, I think essentially, I think I see what you're saying, and I think you're right. I think I think it's just a fluke that it's been so powerful in this round of the playoffs. Really, I think it'll wash out over time. But you're right. It's this idea of the home team thinks it has to win. There's more of a sense of urgency. The whole idea of holding serve, I think, is really what's at play here. Why it's more at play right now, this minute, in all of these series, I don't know. I just don't know.
We will debate it again until next week. Sense of urgency, Paul MacGyver France behind us is flashing. We've done about 20 minutes worth now, so it's time for us to get off. We're done until next week. Until next time, we're going to keep pondering this. We'll give you some answers next week. He's Mike Gross. I'm Eric Stark, and from Paul France, our producer. We'll see you again for the Low Post.